Okay, I'm having a wonderful chat. It's a nine or nine-ish in Europe, in Germany, in Augsburg. I'm speaking with composer Stefan Schulzki. We're going to discuss his 2018 Naos music release, Stefan Schulzki Chamber Music. It sounds so innocent. It sounds so marvelous. It's so complex, so exciting, and what an enormous collection of your aesthetic on one CD. Let me just run by for everybody. Bear with me, Stefan, while I do a little bit of the kind of intro. So we're talking about a wonderful CD of Stefan's chamber music, but it also includes fabulous piano concerto from 2018, the most recent, I think, piece on this CD. A wonderful piece for chamber ensemble and piano. We're going to talk about it. Politisches Lied. I'm so bad at my German, but I hope I got their 2011 text by Norbert Neiman. I think I have that correct. Wonderful piece. A Wildeschein 2 fragment. Another place I don't dare try and pronounce the Auskopplung from
Yeah.
2009 for soprano sax and Hammond organ and electronics. Incredibly wonderful, fascinating colors and so on. Errol Koenig from 2012. We're going to want to speak about that piece. I think it's very, very important for everyone out there that's doing Schubert. You need to look at this piece as well for your programs. Drei Epigramm nach Bertolt Brecht. Three epigrams of Brecht we're going to talk about. And Die Zeit und das Zimmer from 2001. Help me and correct me with my pronunciation as we go. But let's Stefan. I want let me tell everybody who Stefan Schulzki is. German, of course, graduate of Mozarteum, Salzburg Mozarteum, the Mannheim University of Music and Performing Arts, and this is the key. Studied film and music and sound design at the Film Academy Baden-Württemberg, I believe, in Ludwigsburg. But that's the one. That's the big clue that comes up. Your experience in film music and sound manipulation. That's what this CD is about. I love it. Let's see. Let's. What else? Where are you now? You were at. You're teaching music theory at the Leopold Mozart Center at Augsburg University, and you are a freelance composer from that city. Okay. I always start with a little bit of backstory because I'm looking at a fully major composer. All of the training is in place, everything. I don't have to tell you any of this. You are a mature and aesthetically very, very clear composer of contemporary music, can I say? For now, we'll talk about that a little bit. But how about a little backstory? At what point in your youth in Augsburg, I believe you were born in Augsburg, yes?
I was born there, yes.
When, how does a little kid A become interested in music? I presume it must have been keyboard. And then when does contemporary music come into your life?
So I started when I was born. There was already a piano in the house, so it was quite natural to learn that instrument. And I started with it at the age of 6, and I was growing up more or less on a playing ground as everybody, as all the other kids, and uh, I had some ideas what I would become as a professional. I want to be a writer. I want to be a director of films, and I always knew that I would someday probably teach the piano and write my music. But I was not very diligent on the piano.
I'm
I
so
was
glad
not.
to hear that. As a failed pianist myself, go ahead. Not that you are a failed pianist at all, but in my case, I was not diligent. Go ahead.
Okay, probably you would be shocked if you knew how my state of mind was when I was, let's say, 17. I didn't know much about classical music. I can say I grew up with all kinds of non-classical music, including punk and hip hop and anything you could imagine.
As is clear in this CD, by the way. Go ahead.
Okay, and it was not before I was 18 when I decided, okay, now I need to study music, and first of all, I should practice the piano so I will be able to study piano at all, music at all. And so, and suddenly I discovered the world of classical music. I had to play for school. I had to play a fugue by Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, and I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with Beethoven symphonies, and I fell in love with Chopin studies and Liszt, for example, transcendental studies. And I was very fascinated and in love. So, and I had to practice a lot. And then it was already the 90s, and I was 20 years old, and I studied piano. And gradually, I discovered also the music of the 20th century, the classical music, and I was fascinated by that too because I always liked um, music or films or whatever that is a bit adventurous or fascinating. And well, and I think my development was very gradually. So maybe I could say I was 25, 26 when I really listened to classical music of the 20th century. And I was already 27 or 28 when I started studying composition. And I was,
That's a bit late.
yes, because, you know, because I had to learn a lot on the piano and I had to train my fingers a lot. So I needed to spend some years on that. And well, so I was already 27, 28, and then I came to film academy and uh, composition studies at the same time. That was actually not so much. It wasn't really allowed, but it was okay because it was no problem.
Huh?
I, I could manage it. I,
Wonderful.
I did. I didn't have to miss any lessons.
And I think you've just described a wonderful progression that most of us progress through in terms of the repertoire. In my own example, I remember when I was in seventh and eighth grade, 13, 14 years old, I was devouring the orchestral repertoire as much as I could. I was going to be a conductor. I was certain of this and followed through for a while, for a pretty good while. Anyway, my point is that Bernstein symphonies at age 13 were incomprehensible.
Ah,
A bit more listening, a couple of years go by, all of a sudden Bernstein symphonies are Mozart. If you get my drift,
yes,
it takes time to assimilate
yes,
the subtleties of music as it has progressed. I also want and been worked and manipulated by so many wonderful composers, but also I want to compliment you on help. I just forgot what it was. Well, your piano, your piano studies. So, did you have any intention that you might be a concert pianist before composition, or it sounds like you were rather clear that you're aiming toward film, maybe music. Go answer that one for me.
um, well, the idea of becoming a film music composer that came pretty late. It was because some people who knew me they said, "Ah, you like films, or you like." I loved films all my life, and I had a variety of musical uh, styles that I loved, and that was the reason. And on the other hand, as for a dream of becoming a concert pianist, I think of course, I think everybody dreams of things like that, but I was quite realistic, I think. I knew I couldn't make a living with that. I would become a piano teacher and sometimes I will give a concert, I still do now. And that's pretty much it.
And you play a great deal on this CD as well. So your chops, your fingers are still in good order, we believe. Uh, it's a little bit of a dumb question, but I had a glance on your program booklet. There were just a couple of images of you of a page or two from your scores. Of course, they're incredibly complex, and we're going to go there in a bit. But I'm thinking looking at these scores, of course, I've seen this kind of notation before, but it's always, immediately daunting and extremely complex. How hard is it to find musicians? I mean, over the years for this CD, for example, you have so many people involved. How many years has it taken to establish a certain rapport with musicians that you know are going to be able to sit down and understand where you're coming from? How hard is that task in Germany?
Well, actually, it came naturally and without much effort. It was difficult in the year 2000 when I was having a commission for the German theater in Berlin. That's how the last piece on the CD. It was written
Ah,
for a play at the German theater, and the director he wanted me to compose in about that style, and I had to search for musicians who could do that and who could really play that on stage perfectly with no light, with no score, and that was very hard. I spent some weeks to find the people,
especially
but
the business about playing in a theater in the dark, of that where literally, as I remember from your program booklet, they had to memorize a great deal of that
yes,
particular score that we'll discuss in a little bit. So that's tough. But how about it just in general? It's not musicians don't, as professional as they may be, they may have a gut feeling that's wonderful about contemporary music, and others may not. That's kind of what I'm getting at. This assemblage of musicians for the CD, friends of several years or people who you've heard about, kind of get my
you know,
drift?
uh, most of the pieces on the CD are commissioned, or actually all of them were
Yeah.
commissioned, and then well, it was, for example, Prodigy's Fleet 2011. It was for a festival, and the people who were invited to play on this festival, they were already uh, from a pool of musicians that composers knew in Munich that they are professionals and they are experienced with contemporary classical music. So, or for example, Salome Kammer, who sang the part on the CD, she is probably the most famous singer in Germany for this kind of music.
Fabulous, fabulous. Also, I want to compliment you. I believe you were born in 1970. I hope I'm not
Yes,
out of line with that. And
yeah.
and what you said in the beginning of your story about how you played so much other sorts of music. I'm the old guy, born in the late 40s, trained
Oh, really?
trained strictly as a conductor, square as can be. I want to repeat, as I do to so many of you, of your sort, of your age, I continue to be relieved that you, as we'll discuss in this CD also, the influences of so many other styles of music, and you survived to become a great and wonderful contemporary German composer. So what I'm saying is, somehow all of the people I meet who are younger than I, once upon a time I would have been horrified that they spent even a few years chasing other things like pop and rock and whatever, reggae or other types of music, and then, as you described so beautifully, kind of settle down and get a little bit of focus. All of that's in your head from the past. All of that's there, all that experience. And then as a mature and maturing and fully trained serious art music composer, you use all of that material. So congratulations, if that made any sense at all. Let's see, what else do I want to ask you before we'll have a dig into some of the music on the recording. Um, just a generic question. We spoke a little bit before taping, before we talk about the specific works. In my listening and taking notes, I found, uh, as I've said to you, what I love is when not a single moment of time and sound is in any way superfluous, where everything is intended and intentional. That's composition for me, but also making use of so many wonderful electronic devices. And they come in, as you know very well, in some of these pieces in little snippets and little bits and pieces and moments that are crazy and wonderful, and then they're gone. As I asked you before, some of these, all of these works apparently are intended for live performance. You know where I'm going. But how many require a studio preparation? Remember we had that talk. Well, let's run through that for my viewers about how you organize these kind of complex pieces that involve electronic music and tape scores and other things that have to be cued. So, your turn.
Well, as a film composer, I have a studio, and I'm used to work on the computer, and it's my duty not only to compose. Actually, to be honest, when I do film music, I hardly write any score by hand because I need all the time just to produce it already. At the right from the start, I produce the music. I make it sound as I want it to sound. I hope so. And so when I write, for example, when I wrote the piano concerto, I did that in my you say DAW or DAW or DAV. Do you know that term?
I don't.
It's a sequencer software.
Got it.
Yes, with several tracks running at the same time. Yes, and there I can, for example, play the piano part and so on, and then I can already fix some elements of electronics to that piano part. I can already produce these electronic sounds and see how they work together with everything else.
So let's talk. Let's plunge right into the first track on this CD, the Piano Concerto from 2018 for piano, flute, oboe, clarinet, horn, percussion, zither, string quartet, and electronics. Now that is a combination of sounds that is fabulous. I just love the way you use so much sound imagery. And I'm going to give a little quote. The image of calm, you say, and by the way, this reminds me of the cover of your CD. You say, quote, the image of calm mountain lakes, smooth as glass, suggested a slow movement to me, but one that contained disturbances intended to generate a certain tension despite the music's contemplative nature. So there already is your artistic statement about this piece. Now tell me, let me look down here a bit at some of my notes because I have a couple of things. I love the idea, first of all, the piece is absolutely mesmerizing from the very beginning.
Thanks.
And that is, in other words, my compliment is, I believe that's a proper word, you intentionally take us to a very interesting, mesmerizing sonic world with single notes. Just the effect of single notes in the beginning of this piano concerto and the use of pedal for percussive effects, all that good stuff. I have here, quote from me, I'm hooked. I must know where it's all leading. That's what this concerto is about. You lure us into this large thing. How about you tell me, take it from there, would you please, in case I get lost in this beautiful, beautiful concerto. It's about 20 minutes, I think. I can't remember.
Yes.
About 20. Yeah. I guess what I'm asking is, all of this is deliberate, of course, because you're a composer. You have an intention. You are taking an audience somewhere.
Maybe that's because I'm a film composer.
I'm thinking.
And so I have to. It's usually my job. I get paid for composing to lead the audience somewhere or into some certain emotion. I need to know what I will be evoking, what I should do with my music. And
but it's as a film composer, then, if I'm following you, I hope correctly, it's about imagery. I mean, you are writing music as a film composer for images, for moving images, and in a way, this piano concerto is a pictographic or something, huh? In your mind, is that how film composers work? I'm asking a rhetorical question.
As a film composer, the image is already there, and I know the frame, and I know how long it should be. And if if I can, when I compose the concerto, for example, I have my imagery is rather the form. I see the form, and there could be certain images that I have in my mind, but I wouldn't like to tell it to the audience. That's why it has not a certain name other than Klavierkonzert.
Yeah.
It's just because I hope, I think maybe the audience will think of the same things that I do. But if they think about something else, it will be okay, of course.
Exactly, exactly. And you just described exactly the difference. Writing for film, you have the images before you. You are given the task of assembling sound that will accompany that visual image. In a work of art like a piano concerto, you have ideas in your own mind. If I'm paraphrasing, I hope correctly. And it all has an arc. This concerto has a gorgeous arc, and as all composers say, if you have a visage of farmland and landscape and cows and pigs, that's fine. If you have a vision of, I don't know, of somewhere else, that's fine. That's the magic and the glory of it for us who are listening. But I love your use of colors, this color field, stunning beauty. Now that's the other thing I want to make sure everyone is clear out there. First of all, I am so glad I encountered and found you, because I want my North American audience primarily to be given an opportunity to see how much incredible repertoire is coming from Europe and can be played. And we'll go there a little bit further. But for now, we're still in this wonderful piano concerto. The way you use brass tones and string colors and percussion. It's also so everything happens, as I said earlier, when it's supposed to, if that makes any sense to a person who's listening for the first time. The intelligence of every sound plateau, if you will, or every sort of color that you create, mood that you create. It's wonderful, including the dark places. There are some dark moments in this concerto, of course, and you have already declared that you will not tell us what what might have been on your mind. I have something. I'm just reading from my notes. At some point in the concerto, there's a dark low chord with electronic interferences. I put in quotes. It's so cinematic. It's so spooky. This is how I'm responding. Uh, and again, what I love is the way you use to such powerful emotional effect single tones on the piano, on the instrument, just a single note with all of the surrounding color and imagery. It knocks me dead. A single note. Fabulous. What else do you want to talk about in terms of the piano concerto? The instrumentation we've mentioned. What else do I have? Oh, it goes on for pages, but I'll get this into my review when I manage to get caught up on writing reviews for performingartsreview.net, where it'll all go up with this. But I love the idea of how you use clusters, sound clusters as well. What kind of process is involved? Is that too vague a question?
Well, uh,
Clearly, it's
I'm not sure I
indecipherable.
can tell you why. It just evolved while composing. There
Hmm.
could be some moments of clusters as well,
Yeah.
because there are many, many moments, many passages where the tones are a lot of tones or notes, and then there will be moments when it is more generous.
Mm.
Maybe these are the moments when you hear the cluster, what you call.
More
Yes.
generous harmonically, certainly. In other words, it becomes richer for it in certain moments, if that makes any sense, in terms of these clusters. From the opening, for example, which is extremely simple and clear and clean.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and hang
I
on, I gotta
like
get.
to have diversity. You know,
Yeah,
maybe that's why anything could be included in one composition.
and I want to. I'm now looking at the end of the concerto, and because I'm blind in a certain sense, just listening. I made a note something about tuned sounds. In other words, there's
Yeah,
a bit of microtones or something, and
yeah,
and it's deliberate and designed, of course. But to
yeah.
me, it takes me immediately to some kind of distant memory. Can you describe the how this concerto sort of winds down? Long chords, a sense of ending, repeating notes, this tuned sound, this color that's so unique.
Thanks. What was the question?
Well, it's about, and of course it's hard even to ask the question, let alone get an answer. But in this concerto, 20 minutes, it's at the end that I hear these prepared notes, if you will, on
Ah,
piano.
yeah,
This different color. This It's just a
yeah.
tiny thing, like a toy piano almost kind of sound. That's what I meant about taking me somehow back to some distant youth or childhood. I know that's just me, but can you can, how
I
come
think I can.
then and there did you decide to do that?
I can tell you that this piece for me is like let me think about the English word voyage, a journey.
Voyage, a journey,
What do you say?
a journey.
Yes, it's traveling. It's a traveling piece. At the moment, at the beginning, it is one plateau, or one state of mind, or whatever, and then it develops, and I can I will tell you a secret. I was
Ah,
thinking
at
I
last.
was thinking about traveling through space with some technology that is not there, still not there.
Guess what? My last remarks and the piano stirring in the last seconds that almost sent it into the universe. It's fantastic! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Ah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's move. I have I really want to speak about El Carnegie, but let's have a look at like just kind of go through a little bit. Let me see if I need
Yeah.
anything else. Yeah, well, politische Lieder, politisches
What did
Lieder
this? Yeah.
from 2011 for mezzo soprano, tenor sax, trombone, electronic guitar. This is your youth. Piano, percussion, accordion, violin, and double bass. The poet in this case is Norbert Niemann. Niemann.
Norbert Niemann.
Niemann. Thank you. Uh,
Niemann. Yes.
and I mentioned before we taped, I couldn't find English translations in the little booklet, French
Yes.
and German.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So I did my hobbled my grabbed the German and put it into Google, and so the tests are terribly inadequate. But I think the gist of this poem is something about just the whole dysfunction, frankly, and how dumb people are. I mean, that society has been dumbed down. Am I wrong? For example, we are not
Yeah.
particularly bright. We don't know what we're doing.
Oh,
Am I
yeah.
close in the translation? And yet we're interested in opinion, and we
Yes.
say that as well. So we're kind of stupid. We don't really have any bright ideas, but we are somehow. Help me out here. Uh, Tell me
Oh,
about why you chose this text,
you,
and so on. Yeah,
you know, I was asked to work with the writer of the text, and I choose the writer,
yeah.
and he wrote the text, and then I composed. So the,
Is the poem though about a basically dysfunctional society, about where we are these days? I'm thinking of my own American society. We're in chaos over here, but just how people are staring at the TV and preoccupied with dumb stuff. We watch in the evening TV. We watch things, see things, but do we react to them? I'm paraphrasing somewhat.
I think I think the text is basically about what we don't know.
Mm.
We think we know a lot because we watch television, and we think we know what is going on because the politicians seem to talk to us, but actually we know nothing.
Thank you.
Maybe I could
I feel
break it
better
down.
because I'm thinking where you applaud what eludes, we applaud what eludes our judgment. And there's,
Yeah,
well spoken, and we don't have a clue what was just spoken at
yeah.
us
We have
by
to.
politicians, politische Lieder.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely wonderful. Let me see what my notes are about this kind of assembly, how you put this piece together. Um, a disarming jazz riff. The whole thing opens. Remember, I've just been through the piano concerto. By the way, all of you will have this experience when you get the CD. But the piano concerto, you know, very important, serious, interesting, fascinating, complex work. And what do I get in the politisches Lieder? An immediate jazz, a jazz opening riff. In other words, and then a little rock and roll and all kinds of stuff. And then the mezzo comes in. And of course, you have described in that opening. Tell me if I'm wrong. The world as it is in this time. All these influences and sounds. Go ahead.
Maybe I won't be good with really explaining why I composed like this, but I can tell you that generally I like I do like diversity, and I have so many influences, um, and so and this text gave me a good opportunity to use all these influences because I could say it's about our complex reality, and it's uh, everything could be there.
Yep. And there's still a mystery about it. I'm thinking toward the end here. I have a little note here about there are mystery chords in the strings. I'm speaking about toward the end of the piece. And
Yeah,
then again, a kind of I write it. At the time write it as a kind of dreamlike fragment. It could also be unconsciousness, possibly,
it could be.
about how
It's a
people are really
mystery.
unconscious of the world going on around them. And then
Yeah.
the piece, and again, the mezzo speaks this poem very, very clearly about everything we've described, about people being distracted and being told things that they don't understand, and so on. And the way you end this piece, catch me if I'm wrong here, but what I have written down is this: the piece ends in a kind of twilight zone. It's this stunning low rustling fade out. It's disturbing.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's meant to be, yeah. It is. It is disturbing.
It could. I don't mind.
Composers are so demure, so coy. I don't mind if that's how you feel. It disturbs you very well. And by the way, again about the brilliant use of electronic sounds. Um, in other words, so intelligent. Because what I have here is a note about at the very end, as you know, this low rustling sound. It's electronic. It's a low kind of rustling sound. I hope I'm close in understanding what I heard. But
In
it's
which
just, yeah.
in which piece?
I'm in the help. I'm still in the. I have to run up and find it so I can. The politisches Lieder at the end of the
Ah,
politisches Lieder.
yes. There's
Lied.
no electronics.
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
yes, it's not electronic.
Oh, it isn't.
It isn't. No, no.
What is that low rustling sound that I heard? Do you remember? It's a fabulous effect.
Well, I hope I will recall correctly. Maybe you mean a double bass, or maybe
Maybe
it
that's
could
the double
be. Maybe
bass.
it's a double bass. Yes.
Yeah, that might be it. That makes sense now. Okay, great, wonderful, thank you. Um, I'm starting to run a little bit tight, so I need to speak to you about Erlkönig. Again,
Yeah.
I have a terrible time with umlauten over my O's, but
Yes.
I think Erlkönig.
No, you do fine.
Okay, okay,
You're
thank you.
doing fine.
Uh, Danke, from 2002 for baritone and piano. And as you say in your notes, this is the Schubert masterpiece, a work of such profundity. Everybody in the profession knows this piece, and you make very clearly, I don't want to go there, and you do. This is your most beautiful piece on the CD. It's, I presume, intended to remind us of the period, at least, because it's extremely tonal and gorgeous and even classical, if you will, from that period, kind of, sort of, in a contemporary sort of way. And I'm going to use a quote here. Quote, my intention was not merely to be different from Schubert at all costs, but to at least attempt to set the text in as original a way as possible, which was hard enough, he says, with an exclamation point. Yeah, and this is this story about the evil, possibly the elf king spiriting a young child away to God knows what, a terribly depressing little and dark fairy tale. Speak to me about this piece, and I'm going to, before you do so, I want everybody out there, hello, all of you, I know there are professional musicians, a lot watching. This piece of yours, this idea about Erlkönig needs to be on every Schubert program in the world. Now, now that I've set you up like that, tell me about, it has to be different from Schubert at all costs. What was that about when you received the commission? I know you mentioned that you hesitated a great while.
It was so hard because I had to, of course, I had to compare what I'm doing to what is already there, and that was the hardest thing to do. I needed to compare, and I couldn't really delete every idea that I have just because Schubert had this idea. So there are some moments when you could be reminded of the Schubert version. And it was okay for me because I didn't have a better idea then. It's
Yeah,
just a moment.
and not only that, this is why I really urge people. I hope I'll be able to put this particular piece up on the website, but I urge all of those who perform Schubert to really have a serious listen to this work for all the reasons you've just described, but also that you stay, it's an homage for Schubert. In a way, you try not to, but in a way,
I try not to.
but it's an homage. I mean, your tonal areas, for example, are an homage of sorts. Speak to me about that so I can get out of trouble if I'm in trouble here.
Um, it could be an homage. I just tried to set this text into music as good as I could. Actually, that's it. And I had a piano. It should be for piano and voice.
Yeah.
So, I didn't. I mean, I thought, why should it be very dissonant? Because when at that moment when Alkönig speaks to or whispers to the child, he tries to be attractive and not to frighten the child. So these moments must sound beautiful.
Oh, to be seductive,
It
if
should
you
be
will.
seductive,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, you've succeeded. I love this piece. It's absolutely stunning, as I've said. Sorry, I have some traffic outside roaring by. But if ever there were a contemporary piece that would fit perfectly in a Schubert program, this is it. I think
Thank you so much.
any audience is going to understand. Homage is not the proper word. You're quite right there. Uh, by the way, that's an original tune. I hope this beautiful tune that runs throughout the piece. Is that yours, or am I missing some subtle hint to Schubert?
I didn't I didn't want to quote or cite anybody or I it's my tune.
It's
Yes.
gorgeous. It's
Thank
gorgeous. Okay, well, so there, that Eric Koenig, 2002, 2012 for baritone and piano. You've gotta have a listen, everybody, to that piece. It's fabulous, perfect for programming on a so-called classical program because it's not going to offend anyone at all, and it's going to give new insights into Schubert and into this text. I especially like, once again, you do. Let me try and find it here. Come on, where are you? And correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's also another little. Uh, uh, Hang on, I'm finding it here. There's another little piano thing, a little out of tune, deliberately out of tune, little bit, or something. Or am I incorrect in that recollection? Do you
you.
remember?
There are some parts that when you do something in the inside of the grand piano.
Ah, okay. That's I
Yeah.
wondered. I wondered.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I understand. Yeah, ascending a low piano fragment, supporting the singer, and looking at the end here. Yeah, that's you were playing the instrument, but also doing a pluck or something. There's something going on inside this instrument.
That's
Yeah.
why I have to confess it's quite hard for the piano player.
Yeah, I would
It
think
could
so.
be it could be nice for the singer, but he or she should have a very good piano player um, who doesn't mind.
Who isn't offended by these new techniques?
It's not
But again, there's nothing superfluous about any of your sound. So when that moment appeared, I'm remembering it now. It is a kind of something inside the instrument going on. It's exactly where, and how it should be. And of course, the ending is in Zeman, something, the whispered end. It's terrifyingly gorgeous, if you get my drift. The whispering elf, come with me, my young, charming child. I mean, it's wonderful. Okay, now let's move on a little bit. How am I doing on time here? I would like to. Here we go. I'm in trouble with my German, but Drei Epigramme nach Bertolt Brecht.
Oh,
From,
it's good. Yeah.
I almost said gracias because I'm in California. From 2014 for soprano, electronics, and piano. And here's another quote, and then I want you to discuss it a little bit for me. Quote from yourself. Created for a project at the Augsburg Brecht Festival, where one evening was dedicated to staging the war premiere and war premiere. And I'm not quite sure about that. That's why I wanted you to explain Brecht pictures or something. 69 photographs were projected in Brecht's corresponding four-line poems. So these are little short pieces, three short little pieces. Give me an overview, and then we'll look at dass sie da wären. You'll be better at this than I. That they were there. That was my rough translation. Afrika is the second little fragment,
Yeah.
and the third, den kleinen Bruder, the little brother. And I've
Yeah.
seen that photograph. That's in the program book, but horrifying.
Yeah.
There's nothing amusing about Bertolt Brecht at all. Go, tell me about this piece. Drei Epigramme nach Bertolt Brecht.
I would describe this piece as, I don't know the English word, like some kind of musical monument for about war. It's about war. It's about different aspects of war, and that's why it could be quite difficult or hard to listen to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not very pleasant. It's about war. Yes.
Yeah, all three, and they each are associated with a particular photograph. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, for example, dass sie da waren, quote, there was smoke to tell that they were there. Sons of fire. This is where the German English translation probably fails us, but not of light. Where did they come from? Out of the darkness. And where did they go from here? Nothing.
Into nothing. Yes.
And you use electronics so horrifyingly, it's torturous. This first piece, piano enters and it's taken away suddenly. The whole thing it seems to require. I ask myself, a studio assemblage. Is this also? This was also performed. All of this has been performed live, but it's difficult. Yeah.
Yes. But I pre-produced quite a lot in the studio with
Yeah.
synthesizers and several electronic devices.
And in live performance, is that about somebody does some footwork? You know, you push a button with your foot, you do something to trigger some of these effects, or are they? You see what I'm trying to get at? Are they? Uh,
Yes.
how does that work
Uh,
these days?
uh, for example, in this piece, there are large moments where I could just push the button and let the playback play itself. Yes.
Yeah.
But then, on the other hand, there are certain moments when I use a live um, manipulation of the voice, for example.
Yeah. I
This is done
wondered.
by effect modules or guitar effect pedals, for
Yeah.
example, or effect devices, and the signal coming from the microphone is going into the effect machine, and I push buttons or whatever I do.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for that explanation. It's because it's such it's so curious. Again, everything is so precise, so exactly necessary to be in place in terms of the special effects, for lack of another word, that you incorporate in the piece. I just was wondering, but you made it very clear that you can control everything in live performance. You can control these loops if near correct and so on. Nice. Den kleinen Bruder, and I want to speak about this piece. It's the last of the three, and the reason is because of the image. Here, it's clearly Vietnam War, or could be any war, but I'm thinking Vietnam War. An American,
Looks like Vietnam,
yeah,
but it
it
must
does,
have been before actually.
maybe. But the
Yes, it
idea
should
of and I prefer to look at that image as a very humane image in that it's scary, but there is a soldier, full helmet, and he's cradling a little infant that has obviously been through hell and back in terms of
yeah.
the event that must have the the child is obviously just fractured, and here is this soldier holding this baby. What an incredible image to even begin to try and wrap music around. How was that process? You're given the project and you see the photographs. So Den kleinen Bruder. How did you approach that particular little short piece?
Well, actually, I'm always glad if I have a chance to give some tenderness musically. And this is a very tender moment, a tender photo. It has a dark background, but it's about caring and loving. And after the terror of the second piece,
Mm,
I think the audience needs
mm.
some mm, tenderness.
And we're speaking. The second little short piece is Africa
Yes.
of the three. Um, and I'm just trying to figure out what the because as I had a little trouble with the German English translations, but it is a very upsetting. The second piece is very upsetting. The third is tender, as you know. It's a beautiful way to end this trilogy of short pieces about these literal photographic images. Um, and just now to pull us back to the end of Den kleinen Bruder is this stunt at the effect for me, and I'll put it in my notes and my reviews, stunningly moving, accessible musically, and that's really very important when you're really reaching the human heart, and yet there's kind of a almost pop tune aspect to it. I hope I'm not getting in trouble here.
Yeah.
Humming sounds and such. I mean, like a woman, a mother holding her babe, juxtaposed on that photograph of this man in uniform holding this babe. How close am I?
You're welcome. I mean, yes, it has something female as well. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, yeah, that would the tone if I can run with that a little bit, the tonality is in a way sort of female. There is the tender tune. There's the um, what do you call anyway? I guess tonality is what I'm talking about. The major tonality really in this 20, in this piece. Fabulous. Okay, great. I hope I'm not jumping around too much here, but let's see. What else? Let me just see before, because I gotta sort of wind it down. What would you like to speak about from this CD? What particular piece that we haven't discussed? That might be a good way to wind it down. Is there anything I haven't, any piece that you really that are waiting for me to bring up and I have not brought up yet? Does that make any sense to you? Do you remember?
Oh, actually, it's fine for me. So
Okay,
I'm,
okay,
I'm okay.
because I'm looking at the last set, die Zeit und das Zimmer, the time and the room. This is music specifically. Let's go there. We got time. What the hell? People can either listen or go have lunch. Doesn't matter. Um, uh, uh, because it's so a part of who you are. This idea of writing music for plays as well as for cinema. So I don't know what was visual for these four, I guess, pieces. But maybe help me out. Go through it a little bit. Sie hatten in meine Karten gehorcht. I hope I'm close. You should have
Yeah.
listened to my cards. That's how my rough translation was.
I think it's very hard to explain the meaning of these titles because they are taken out of the play
Mm,
um, literally,
yeah.
and they sounded good as titles. That's it.
Aha!
So I think the writer Boto Strauss, he will know
Yeah.
what it's about.
Okay. And then the room is the last piece, the fifth piece here. But anyway, this
Yeah.
this piece is for let's see. Hang on, let me get up here. Okay, Die Zeit und das Zimmer, from 2001. Time and the Room, if you will. Music for a play by Bertolt Strauss. Um, what was I gonna say? I was looking for the instrumentation. Can you give me the instrumentation so I won't have to go up?
It's flute, viola, and harp.
Fabulous. Oh, and that, by the way, is an instrument. This is an instrumental piece. It's fabulous, wonderful. The colors and however to associate with the actual play, it doesn't matter. I think you have just said moments ago. Really doesn't matter.
It's I couldn't tell you in a rational way
Mm,
why it had to be like this.
mm.
And especially, I had to say that I should say that the director he had this idea for this instrumentation because the director knows a lot about music
Ah,
and
nice.
he knows the Debussy piece with the same instrumentation,
Yes. Yeah.
and it was his idea, and I understood in an intuitive way when
Yes.
and I had to compose it before he brought it on stage. The music was already composed, and then he directed and he had his rehearsals.
And just on a wonderful happy note, because I know other at a much smaller level, but college level composers for theater, who are in resident, and the director comes and says, "Hey, I need music for the a play," and you compose the music, and then you bring it in, and the director says, "Nah, I don't like that. That wasn't even close to what I had in mind." Apparently, you and this director were.
I
Uh,
was very lucky. I was very happy that he was the director, and he didn't he didn't want me to change one note. That's very that's very rare.
yes, it is.
It was because the music was written before that, so that's an important
Ah,
difference. Yes.
and also a little bit of respect, I suppose, frankly. In other words, the music was written before, and he might have said to himself, "Oh, I'd love to change that, but I don't dare. I don't dare ask." I'm kidding.
Well, I don't know what was going on in his mind, but he already knew
Sorry.
some concert. Yes, he already knew some concert music by me, and we already had worked together, and he trusted me, and
Bingo.
I'm happy.
Bingo. Okay, we're going to wind it down here. I've had a wonderful conversation with composer Stefan Schulzki. We're talking about the 2018 Naos music release, Stefan Schulzki, chamber music. And boy, more than chamber music. I mean, a whole world of sound, fabulous sound, wonderful sound, intoxicating, mesmerizing. You got it here. This is a CD that is of music that needs to be known, and I'm so glad that I hope project this out to my North American audience in particular, because it can't be a more interesting or diverse CD, really, in terms of what you are offering, of who you are and what you are about as a composer. So I just want to thank you for. I'm so glad I found you, and I'm glad that we've had a chance to chat. And this is what I'm looking for: is all this incredible repertoire that needs to be put out to people, so more people will, especially professional musicians, will have a chance to have a look and maybe decide to perform some of this music. Stefan, anything coming up that we should know about? Any big commissions? Any huge opera deal? What?
Pardon me. You mean if I want to
Anything
see
coming up in your future, like an opera deal or a new,
an opera? No.
I'm just curious. I was being
Yes.
facetious. I'm making fun.
you know, actually, there is so much music I still want to do, and um, I'm planning to use the instruments that I have at home. And for example, I have a drum set, I have a Hammond organ, I do have a piano, of course, but I have a lot of synthesizers. I have electric guitars. I have a lot of electronic devices, and now I'm very looking forward to use all this and do some kind of music that you wouldn't call chamber music.
Ooh,
So that was my chamber music CD, and
that's
now
that.
now
Next is something else. Very,
yes.
very interesting. Very interesting. And exactly. By the way, I love the way you use your Hammond organ in this, or a Hammond organ in this CD. And there's something about just the name Hammond organ that, for me, conjures something a little kind of cornball, a little bit American. I mean, something about Hammond organ that's almost innocent or something. I don't know. The way you use the colors of the Hammond organ in some of these pieces is just delicious and delightful. By the way, your music is can be extremely amusing, very pleasant, tremendously tongue in cheek. Everything's there. I mean, we're not talking heavy duty, crazy 20th century, drive you out of your mind music. And some of that element is there, of course, to drive us a little bit out of our minds at certain appropriate moments, but beautifully accessible compositions. So I'm again thrilled to have met you, to discovered your music, and I'm going to pass this on to folks. I think we're done. Many, many
Yeah,
thanks in Gothenburg. Gothenburg, where are you?
Augsburg, Augsburg.
Augsburg, sorry.
Yes,
I'm in the
no
wrong
problem.
country there with Gothenburg. Anyway, Augsburg, Germany. A great, great pleasure, Stefan. Many, many thanks.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you for this wonderful conversation.
Pleasure.